Welcome to episode 5 of Past Life, Present Power with Derek Jameson. In this episode, we meet with Alessandra Torresani, who is an actress, the host of Emotional Support Podcast, and mental health and illness spokesperson. She talks about our connection in past lives. She talks about witches, a little bit of a ghost story here and there, and the magic that came from her regression with me. I cannot wait for you to dive in to see how her past lives have affected her life, her family, and her career. Join us now. Hi, Alessandra. I'm so excited for you to be here today. This is like one of my favorite regressions I've ever done. First of all, you're just so much fun and everything that came through. We know we have past life connections. We've talked about it before on your podcast. And I am just so excited to dig in with you and get people to know you for who you are, the power you possess, and the magic that came forward in your regression.
There was so much magic. Literally magic.
Literally. Well, I want you to tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, where you're from, just a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm originally from the Bay Area, as you are as well. Yes. And I moved to LA between like 9 to 11. We would go back and forth for acting, because I was a kid actor. But I am an actress, and I also host a podcast that I created called Emotional Support, which you were a guest on, and it was so much fun. We have to do like a part 2 because I feel like that was forever ago. It was before we even had met in person. So we have to do another one. And I am a mom. So I have a 5-week-old, and I feel like a haggard old mess right now. So I'm excited to put mascara on and have an excuse to look my finest. So if you hear a baby in the background, that's just my little lady. And I'm excited. And I really, I feel very in tune and in touch with psychic abilities. I always have been. My entire family has as well. And so whenever I meet others who I feel that connection with, there's that immediate bond. I even feel, I talked about it with Matthew Lewis before when he was on my podcast, on how we feel so connected to past lives that we bring our past lives into our work as actors. And I think that it really just makes things like that much deeper and that much more intense.
Now, you have some really interesting stories that you have told me about these different connections that you have, even down to the apartment that you lived in West Hollywood at one point. And like, do you want to just give people a little taste of the things you have experienced?
Totally. It's so funny because I was just with my family in San Diego, and we were talking about how when I was a little kid, I used to see things all the time and feel things all the time. And the biggest thing that happened to me when I was a kid is I was about, God, I had just started talking. So however old that is, maybe like, I think I was like 2, they told me when I started talking about this particular thing, is I would say that I came from Africa with my mom and my cousin Mariah. And I would tell them all about the past lives, and I would talk about Egypt. And what was so wild is my cousin Mariah and I are 10 years exactly, and 2 days apart. And when she was that age, she would tell everyone that she came from Africa with my mother. And she never remembered saying this. So it's not something that she ever told me. And it was so clear to the adults in the family being like, oh my gosh, that is a past life that they had. And for me, I was so obsessed with everything in Egypt. And I find myself connected to people who feel that same, connection to Egypt, that same like passion. And, both you and I have bonded over the fact that the Egyptian Museum the Egyptian Museum was in San Jose, which was up north. And I would go there all the time as a kid. And it was one of those things where I would go to the museum and there would be certain artifacts or certain, tombs and stuff from the tombs and stuff where I would be like, oh, I know that. And I couldn't explain why, because I was not a history buff. Like, don't get me started. I didn't care about any World War, whatever, or anything like that. It was specifically Egypt and the culture. And I just feel this connection to it. And then, yeah, I mean, all the time, I mean, still to this day, I mean, I was talking earlier to you about how in my daughter's nursery, the lights constantly flicker. And will always say, welcome, sweet spirits. If you're not sweet, you're not welcomed here today. Get out, be gone. But yeah, and I've lived in many places where they've been haunted, and stories of Howard Hughes was in a building of mine. That was his building that he used to live in. And there was a story, and I'd always feel the elevator was very haunted, and I'd feel this female energy. Well, I had found out that years later, his mistress had actually said to him, you marry me or I'm jumping out of the elevator. And she jumped out of the elevator shaft.
Oh my God.
So like weird stuff like that, like the apartment you're talking about in West Hollywood. I knew that there was someone that was living in the bottom floor, and I had communicated through cell phones. Sounds super weird. But that's how I did it, with another person who came to help me channel, and we released him. And I did not know that the man that I was talking to, who was dressed in a 1920s tuxedo with his violin, was the man that I had released. And it was just like so bizarre. Like there's so much stuff has happened. That's a great episode. I actually talk about the whole story with Shira Lazar. Remember Shira? Yeah, Shira. So check that episode out on emotional support, because it's like 30 minutes long. It's like crazy.
Wow.
But there's always a connection. And I feel like there's never been a situation particularly where I've been scared, except for one time. I was 15 years old, living with my parents. They were still together at the time. And I had woken up to I felt something at the end of the bed. I'm like going on all these stories, but I had felt something at the end of the bed, and I had looked up, and I was wide awake. I was not dreaming. And there was a man who was like 6'9", and he had a brimmed hat on that was super big, and a trench coat, and no face. It was just black. So I knew it was not a burglar. I knew it wasn't a real person, but it was an entity, but I didn't know who it was. And I just watched him for a bit. And then I had like a sleigh bed, but it was like a padded sleigh bed. So the reason why this will make sense, I'll tell you in a second. He leaned over the sleigh bed and started crawling up towards me. And I kicked as hard as I could. And I said, get out. And I was screaming for my parents, to the point where I had to call them on the cell phone because they were in the upstairs. They didn't hear me. It was like dead silence. And like, you can hear everything in this house. And they came downstairs, and I was like, there was a man, there was a man, there was a man. I woke up the next morning, and I had a bruise. The whole bottom of my foot was completely bruised, which would be impossible, because even if I kicked as hard as I could on the sleigh bed, there's no way to, with the padding, I ever would have had this bruise. But it was him. And weird things would always happen in the house, with garage doors opening and closing. And it creeps me out, because I'm 35 years old, and 20 years later, I still can remember every moment of him crawling on the bed. I know.
Sounds like my last Tuesday night.
Sounds like my last Tuesday. It was a wild Tuesday night. But yeah, so all those things happen. So, I'm just touched.
Well, you bring up an interesting point about the lights flickering as well, because before you even gave birth, there was a lot of connection spiritually, and I was just leaving the Getty Villa Museum, where I was looking at the different ancient Greek artifacts, and then we just got to meet up, and it was just such an insane sequence of events that took place, even with that coming through.
Before. I mean, totally. And I think that, it's interesting. I came to my mom a couple of years before I was conceived. And I came to her as like kind of a toddler. And it was literally the same baby. It was just crazy. And she knew that I was coming. And, you know, my daughter Lady came to me a couple years ago as a toddler, and I remembered everything about her. And so when she came, I was like, when she was born, I felt like, it's so crazy because I know everyone's like, oh yeah, like, you know, your child. Like, it's not that I know my child. It's like, I could see, like, she looks into your soul, and like, you're like, I've been bad. I know.
Yeah.
I know. Don't judge me. Like, I'm trying to be better. Like, she literally reads your soul. And I'm like,
I've been
I'm
watching
sorry.
you.
She's like, I know what you did last summer. Like, I know it was bad. I know, you know.
It's so incredible. You make me want to have like a night where like I'm like, oh, this totally inspires me, like a ghost story night or like a paranormal night where we all sit around and everybody gets to like tell a story that they choose.
Ooh, that
Doesn't
would
that
be
sound
so
awesome?
much fun.
Because the people that we know have insane, incredible stories, and
Insane
everybody's so
experiences.
trustworthy. So we know it's not a fabrication.
It's
So
not, no, it's not woo woo. And we're all actors, so we can even sell the story that much
yeah.
better.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, you know what? So speaking of us being in San Jose, living in San Jose where they have the Egyptian Museum, that is like, no, they chose San Jose to put the Rosicrucian
So random.
Orders Museum there. And the fact that there's also the Fry's Electronics, which is all ancient Egyptian.
My favorite.
When the height of ancient Egyptian civilization with its technologies and
Yep.
the height of spirituality, and we look at San Jose and the Silicon Valley as being where all this tech has been birthed and
Where it all came.
exploding.
Yeah.
We're looking at this timeline convergence
Yep.
of how we take the energy. Do people move in a way of self-service again,
Right,
and
right,
hoarding and power, or do we share that beautiful wealth of knowledge, information, technology? So I don't think it's any chance that you and I were born and grew up in that area.
In that world.
Yeah.
And there was the Winchester Mystery House, which you worked out.
Oh yeah. With my maroon and blue pants.
It's literally been Xander in my dream. I forgot to tell him that you worked there because it was Xander, my best friend Xander. He's from the Bay Area as well too. And it was always our dream to like go back as an adult and go and do like the midnight candlelight tour. Like,
Yeah.
ooh, you know, we got to do that. We got to make a trip out there.
Oh yeah.
Is it too soon to take a 5-week-old to like a mystery tour?
Not that
one. Not that one. Yeah.
She is ready. She's like, I'm turned on. I'll have my forks ready.
Because I'm ready.
So past lives. Let's get
Yes.
into it. Why did you want to get a past life regression? What did that even like? Why were you interested in having one of those?
I think what's really cool is you and I met so serendipitously through Clubhouse and through this like random time in our life, right? COVID, isolation, connection. What are the odds that you were on this app? I was on this app. We found each other. We bonded. Anyways, I had you on my podcast. I always wanted to do a past life regression. Always, like since the beginning, because I've always wanted to learn more about it because I've had psychics and, you know, channelers that have told me certain things about me. But I've always wanted to find like a deeper connection. And I had interviewed you and I thought you were so incredible. And I was like, oh my God, this is so great. But I really felt called to do it because there was a part of me that felt called to be a mom. And I didn't know if it was like, oh, well, time is, you know, ticking and I'm in my mid 30s. I didn't know what it was, but there was something about it where I was like, I need to have some sort of, I don't know if I was looking for closure or if I was looking for an openness or a realization or something. I just felt there were questions that needed to be answered, but I didn't know what the questions were. And so I had said to you, I said, okay, you know what? I'm ready to do this past life regression. Let's go for it. Like I'm going to change everything. And it was also at the point when I had decided, okay, if I'm going to have a baby, I'm going to have to start weaning off my medication, you know, for my bipolar disorder. Like there were certain things that certain aspects I was going to start to do once I had made that decision. So I think for me, this was kind of like the decision of I need to go inside the past and inside my head to really decide what I want to do. And I don't know what it was that called me, why it was that particular, day, but I was like, what do you have available this week? It was like very fast.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I felt called, because there was this feeling inside me that was very maternal, but I didn't know what it meant particularly.
And that's interesting because the past lives that you saw, I do know, I even like looked at my notes again before we met. I mean, I can remember what happened, but there's certain words and things that I write down that are just such key components, even to that first life that you woke up into as a kid, as a baby,
Yeah,
right?
right.
With the mother
So
energies
weird.
around. We
Yes.
didn't know where that was going.
No.
But there was this energy of motherhood, of
Hmm.
nurturing and
Hmm.
baby. So straight off the bat, but the way it unfolds is just such an interesting experience, right?
It's so great. And you know what I think was the coolest experience about the past life regression? And I don't know if other people experience this, but I've only listened to it once afterwards. And I listened to it with Sturgis, my husband. And what he noticed, and what I obviously noticed, is my voice changed with every, life. And I think that that's what's so wild, because I didn't remember that, and I was never fully, I would say, blacked out, but it also went by so much faster than I thought it was. I thought I was out for like 10 minutes, and you're like, no, it was like an hour and a half, 2 hours. I'm like, what? Like,
Yeah.
how did that happen? And I don't know if other people experience that, but that's certainly like what I felt during my time when I was in the other world.
Well, you make a good point, because when you're working in the true reality, which is the quantum reality,
Right.
some in modern science and physics, we're looking at the unified field where
Yeah.
everything exists all at once. It's all happening at once. Our vibration is the key to receiving specific information
Sure.
that we need. So as you're doing that, where we're going in infinite time, we're moving
Right.
into a space of infinite time.
Yeah.
And so as we're moving into that space, you're experiencing infinite
Hmm.
time where it doesn't really exist. It's all at once. So
Right.
you're able to tap into these lives that you exist in,
Hmm.
based off of that frequency. And you realize that there really is no time, because time flies when you're having fun. Simple phrases like that speak
It's
volumes of
so
what it
true, though.
actually is. When
Yeah.
your vibration is so high and in a higher level of consciousness,
Forget about it.
there's no time. You're
Yep.
just in it. You can't even tell what's going on. You're
Yep.
just going for it.
No, it's so true. And that's how I felt. Like it went by so fast. And I specifically remember so much about every past life still to this moment. It's bizarre
So
because I don't remember anything.
right, what did come forward for you that stands out to you now that you would like to share? And why did you see that, or why do you think you had to be shown whatever it was?
Well, I think the first life that I experienced, right, that we went back to experience, involved the witches, which we thought were, it was interesting. It was me experiencing them as almost like mothers. And that's where I was as a baby. And it started from baby to being in diapers, but being a little boy, to then going all the way to old age. And that was like what was so wild about that particular life, is that I saw different stages of that person, right? That human. Um, but it was interesting because I think what I took from the witches was we didn't know where they were, right? We didn't know if it was Salem. We didn't know if it was in England. We weren't quite sure of where it was. But what we did learn throughout this whole thing, and then going back and like doing our research, was I never saw them be burned at the stake. I never saw that. And I was very clear in that dream. I mean, in that regression, that I didn't believe that they were burned at the stake. Now, I know nothing about the witches. Like, I know the witches of Eastwick, you know what I mean? Like, really funny. Like, but I wasn't really like a witch person. Like, that wasn't my thing. Like, I'm witchy myself, like, but I wouldn't say like that was something that I've done research on, you know, even though I'm a Halloween buff, that was not my forte. But what was interesting, when we went back to look, we learned that they actually weren't burned at the stake, that was a complete fabrication. And that was just a story that someone had created to make it sound more dramatic than it was. They actually were hung, which is so, you know, grim and so sad. And I think that for me, I learned so much, and it was all about this potion that the witches had made. I took that potion with me across the seas to a small village, which we don't know where it was, but it was a small village that was not in touch with, you know, the world. And it needed that potion to mix with their potion to release spirits. So I think that like, that was like maybe my way of helping out the world, that it was like kind of like, not like, oh my God, helping out the world. That sounded very egotistical. I mean it in the sense where it's not just you that can change the world, right? You are one piece. You need to find the other person that can help you, right? You always need a partner. You always need someone that can be there. You can't do it alone. And I think that that's kind of what I learned from that life, was that you can't do things alone. I also learned that, you know, you think that something may be bad, right? You think, oh, witches, they're evil, the witchcraft. And if anything, they were the ones that needed saving. They were beautiful, and they were just trying to help out others. And if it wasn't for their potion, we wouldn't be able to help these people that were lost, that needed the help that they needed. I just repeated myself. That's a mom brain for you. But you know what I mean? Like, so I think that that's kind of what I took from that. I don't know if that's right or if that's wrong, but I also know that Pee-wee was with me in that dream.
Oh yeah.
In that past life, he was my toad. There was one particular toad that was in the cage that I had like gravitated towards. And this toad went with me from like baby on. And literally like sat like heartbeat connection. And I knew in that past life, I was like, oh, Pee-wee's the toad. Pee-wee's the toad, because I have such a deep connection to him. And we have lived so many lives. Like, he's an old soul as well. And so it was just this moment of like, how bizarre. So whenever I see a toad, you know, now I'm not like, ew, gross. I'm like, oh, it's Pee-wee. You know what I mean? It's this being connection, and that to know that he and I have experienced so much and so many different lives together, I think was so beautiful and wonderful, you know, to see. And also what's weird is, now I'm thinking about this. We talk about the witches, right? You said we had 3 witches. You said there were 3 women in your dream with Pee-wee and I.
Oh yeah. Oh my.
Okay. So here's an even
God.
crazier. So my mom, right? Okay. How am I going to make this sound like not ancestral? Because it always sounds ancestral. My grandmother had a younger sister, and my grandpa had a younger brother. So brothers married sisters. So my grandma married my grandpa, and her younger sister married his younger brother. So I have double cousins, like on both sides. So my mom's double first cousin are 2 women, and they're like my aunts. I've always called them my aunts. I don't know any different. Like, even though we're double cousins, like that's how I've always felt them. And so I've always laughed that, you know, they're like the 3 witches, like after this experience, like I've always said they're the 3 witches. Yeah. So it's so bizarre that you would see these 3 women in your dream, because it would represent my mom and Sandy and Paula. Yeah.
That is so, what I didn't even think about. All I remember is that whole, it was like a tie, just so people that are watching, listening, it's like, it was like 2 days ago, I had a dream. We were in a Thailand kind of, there was a Thai building, beautiful with lights and everything on it. And we got on a boat, and there was 3 other women sitting on the boat, and Pee-wee was there at the back of the boat,
guiding
looking
us
out. Yeah. just looking out, and it was just, and then I don't remember what we talked about. I was just concerned about Pee-wee falling out of the back of the boat.
And I was like, he's got this.
So that I didn't even, that's probably why I didn't even tell you when it happened. And it just came up today right before we got on. Wow.
So and there's significance in three. Like I always feel protected by three. And for instance, like at my daughter was born at 3:30 a.m. Right. And at 3:30 a.m. exactly on the mark, my cousin Sandy, the leader of the witches, and Sandy had texted my mom and said, "How's it going? Is baby here yet?" Like exactly at 3:30 a.m. And she would not be up, you know what I mean? Like she knew I was in labor, but was not like texting every 5 minutes. Like it was just very bizarre. Wow. And we're very connected. All the women in our life were very connected. And her mother and my grandmother always come through electricity, and they always come through spirits. And I saw my first ghost at Sandy's house. It was a dog. It was a little poodle.
Thank goodness.
It would go back and forth.
Thank goodness that's your first time seeing a ghost.
It was a poodle, a little poodle. But you know, so there's some significance there of like, wow, the power of the three protectors always have been there through every life, you know, in some way or another.
That's so incredible. So you bring up a really good point of this correlation between Pee-wee and the toad. Yep. Your family members and these witches, these three women, you bring up a really good point of how people in our current lifetime show up, and sometimes people don't see them in past lives, and then sometimes they do. It's necessary for them to see them in past lives. So you had multiple experiences where you did see, you know, people in the past life. There was one, and you can like kind of talk about a little bit about why there might have been a conflict with somebody that is in your past.
Sure.
And how that from that lifetime, and why you would see that you had a conflict with this person in that lifetime, how they relate to this time. You can just talk a little bit.
Are you talking about the one where I was protesting?
Yes.
Oh yeah. No, so that was really crazy too. I forgot about that one. That's crazy. Yeah, there was one where I was and it's so funny because you know, I have no connection to the 70s, that era. I really don't have a connection to that. I like and appreciate the disco music. Like the gay in me loves that. You know what I mean? Like the gay man, I'm like, yes, Donna Summer. But like, I don't have a connection like to the hippie times and the Beatles and like all of that. That's just not really my vibe. I like feel like there was some sort of life for me that happened like Elvis days, and then like it cut off, like then Motown and all that, and then we're done. But anyways, long story short, it was a very short sequence, right? This was the shortest of all of them. And I remember I was I crossing a bridge or something? I can't remember, but it was a protest. And I was out protesting and trying to stop the war. I was against the war. And this person that I have a conflict with, I had looked over and recognized that person as being the soldier. And the soldier did not want to shoot me, but was told, you have to do this, and shot me and killed me. And it was the first time I experienced death so viscerally, where I was like, and it was not like an immediate death. It was like it was like a very long, like, and I had looked back at that person and been like, wow, you are regretting everything that you're doing, but I have to accept that this is happening because this is not about me right now. This is about you and like you going against your feelings. And it was so weird because I'm not close with this person. Like it's not like this is like, oh, my best friend that like turned against me. Like, but it was so bizarre that I knew who this person was in that short amount of interaction and that short amount of like disdain for one another.
Yeah.
Where I was like, oh, wow, like this is why you don't like me in this life. And you can say that you do, but I know why. Yeah. Like I know exactly what happened because you don't want to face what you fucking did to me. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to face it. It was so bizarre because it's not something, like I said, it's not a best friend. It's not someone that's on my mind. Like it was just like, I knew like, oh, wow. So that's the reason why there's hatred. Okay, cool.
Isn't it interesting?
We closed it.
That's
Yeah.
how you know also when you don't, it's not even in your frame of awareness. You wouldn't even pull something forward like that.
No.
Something you feel almost disconnected to. That's the only way that we can get experiential proof that like, okay, I'm not making this up, because why would I even think of that? Like that wouldn't even be a thing.
And I was a man.
Yeah.
And I was a man too. I was a man. I remember that. And I had bell bottoms on, like, and I had a vest on, like I had like a no shirt, like just a vest. Like I was like feeling myself, like real cool. Like, and also like, mind you, I'm not someone that's over there, like protesting anti-war on a daily basis. It's not like that's in me as well. You know what I mean? So it's not like I was just like projecting like who I am. It's quite opposite. And I mean, not quite opposite, but I mean, like, it's quite opposite, like me, like not feeling like connected to the 70s, like none of that. Like,
sure.
But then it kind of all makes sense, right? Like I'm not connected because like I've had a bad experience. Like, and I don't want to feel connected to that. It wasn't a magical experience, you know, where I found in another life that we went through, you know, I feel a connection to London. Like, I don't understand why I don't live there now. Like, I'm like, why can't I live there right this moment? Like I feel more at home there than I do anywhere. And one of my past lives happened there. And we were laughing because there was so much, there was like mothers and sisters, and once again, lots of female energy around me. And I had talked to, and I knew that the man that was with me, who was my partner, who I was very clear in my past life talking about, I said, he's my partner. And you said, is this your boyfriend? Is this your husband? Like you asked questions. And I said, nope, he's my partner. He's my partner. We're together, but he's my partner. And I remember I was writing a book, and you know, for those who know me, I'm not the most, you know, avid of literature you know, like I love to read, like when it comes to ET type stuff and like cool Egyptian things and mental health. And I was a big reader. Interesting enough, when I was pregnant, I felt really drawn to reading a lot. Which was interesting because it felt like maybe a connection to her. Maybe that's something she enjoys. So that's why I did it. But I remember I was writing a book, and I felt I was coming out of this carriage, and I was walking down, and my partner, this male partner who I knew was Sturgis, was my husband. I could feel it. I even said it to you. It was him. But it did not look like him. He walked me down, and he was like, you know, this is it. Like, I can't believe you did it. And I remember I was going to meet the Queen because she was a fan of my book, and it had just been released, and it was like the big release party, and people were screaming my name, and the name kept going over and over and over. And you're like, what's the name? What's the name? And I was like, Jane. And I don't know, fucking Jane. And I got out, and we went through the, you know, the aspects of the dream afterwards. And I go, oh my God, no, I was Jane Austen. And it was the weirdest experience because I'm not familiar with Jane Austen enough to like be like, I think I read Emma in school because I had to. And I read Pride and Prejudice in school because I had to, but I never was like an avid Jane Austen fan. I mean, never in a million years would I think. And we were like, oh, okay, we should look up, you know, who her husband was. She never had a husband, but she had a partner. And it was just like, what are you talking about? Like, Derek, what happened? Like, what happened, you know? And it was so incredible because the past life started with me looking on to my mother, who I did not have a connection with, who I did not feel was my current mother in this lifetime. I was at the edge of her bed, and I was watching her pass. And then it ended with me being in the bed with my daughter watching me pass. And it was just like this, like, full closure. And I think that was what was so beautiful about all of the past lives is I saw a beginning and an end, except for the one where I was protesting. But I saw the beginning and the end. So I felt like a closure, and I felt this like beauty. And now I'm like, oh my God, it's my daughter who was at the end of the bed, you know? So
Mm,
it's wonderful. And it was like this beautiful experience. So I don't know.
it's so
It's
incredible.
so cool. I
And
want to do
that's,
more.
I know it's like that's why the nuances of the things that come through and the fact that you use specific words like partner, but you were very adamant about partner. You're like, no, it's
Yeah.
not. You're
I'm like, we're not married. Partner, partner.
and so it was very, and that's why when you get that deep into a regression and you go that deep in, your conscious mind is out of the way, there's a moment that people click over where they're saying things that they wouldn't normally say. They're
Total.
using words. Specifically, when I saw one, I kept saying, I'm so fancy. I'm so
Yes.
fancy.
Right. I remember you
I
told me that.
am so fancy. And I just couldn't stop saying it. And I was like, I literally don't use that word.
Yeah.
So I know what it's like when we're saying things out in the aftermath. We're like, oh my God, that's so weird. And I sound
Right.
different.
Right.
You just can't explain it. And people will not be able to fully understand that haven't had their own experience.
Mhm.
Just like everything in our lifetime, it's made to be experienced. No one can ever give you a book, have you read the book, and have you get it. It is
No,
simply something you must
you have to
move
experience it.
through.
And also, I will say too, like, you know, we've talked this whole episode how obsessed I am with Egypt and I feel a connection. Yet my past life regression did not take me to Egypt, which was interesting. So it's like things that you think you are not usually going to experience. It's
Right.
stuff that's like abnormal and bizarre and just like, what? Like, how did this happen? Like the
Mhm.
witches? Like what? Like these things. And that's what makes it even more, dare I say, magical, you know?
Yeah. And so how, you're living a current life where you're a host of your podcast. You've been an actress for so many years on really successful TV shows. You really have pulled through this energy, like as a leader, like Jane Austen was in her creations.
Right.
It makes sense why you would be doing what you do today, and
Right.
showing you that this comes from past lifetimes where you were more upfront in things. How do you think seeing a past life, the information that comes forward, the realizations you come to, how do you think it benefits or how it works with your career or the things you're wanting to do?
Oh my gosh, for so many reasons. I mean, afterwards, when I was like, oh my gosh, I was an author. That's so cool to write a book, right? It made me like remember, like, I always wanted my mom to write a book, to write a book about the experience of being a mother dealing with a child with mental illness. And I always like pushed that on her to say, I don't remember a lot of things. This is something that you should talk about, and you should share with other, parents. But after that, experience, I wanted to write things down more. I thought, maybe I won't be an author, but I feel and like have this like need to like write stuff down right now. And I started writing way more, especially when I was pregnant. I was writing nonstop, like
Mm,
just my thoughts. And they were very dark thoughts and very like upsetting thoughts, but I would write them down because I thought, what, these are important things. And I also felt, yes, I have a podcast, but for me, that I was treating it as like my audio diary, because for me, I am able to express more with my words by speaking them out loud, by not thinking before. If I write, sometimes I think and I'm like, oh, I don't want that. And I exit out,
yeah.
where I was like, oh, wow, I'm really happy that I'm doing this in quote unquote audio diary for my daughter, because she's probably going to think it's like not cool at all. But eventually, like, we'll go back and listen to the experience. And truthfully, like, I was very candid and very honest about my experience of a pregnancy. And if it's something that she goes through when she's older and she decides to have a child, and she may live with bipolar disorder, may not, maybe there's certain things that could help her. It's like a way, it's a keepsake, right? It's something to have, right? It's
Yeah.
something that's like tangible in the sense, you know what I mean? Like audio tangible, but um, so I think like that's a perfect example of what it is. Also with the dream about the witches is it talked about invention, and I had learned that I was like building a ship, right? That was what I wanted to do. And I needed to build the ship to be able to get the potion to the other potion, to release the spirits, and realizing that, maybe life is not just about what you want. It's about how you can help others, and really being creative and inventive and do something different that you didn't think you ever could do before, and take that giant step and take that giant leap. So maybe that means for me, steering away from acting and taking a leap at something I've always wanted to do, but I maybe had been too scared to do, whether that be like directing or, creating an app. I don't know, like something, So I think that there are little aspects that you can take from it and, take it with a grain of salt. Even if you're like, I don't believe any of this, like, okay, you don't have to believe it. But there were certain things that kind of taught me and gave me the kind of confidence to know, okay, I have been capable of doing this before. I'm capable of doing it again.
Yeah, it really empowers you. It
Yeah.
really empowers you, and you look at it's a way of stepping back from Alessandra's life
Right.
and looking at Alessandra from a higher perspective, your higher self perspective,
Right.
and seeing that she went through or is moving through the same, these other characters of you are moving through
Right.
similar conditions with the same energy. And when you see it in a different way, you realize that it's all part of the gift and the process
Right. Right.
within it, and you can take those gems that are within it, and then they layer in over the years. So as you go through years, like my past life regression, the last thing where I was saying on the fancy thing, I didn't realize that that was in the town that I now live in.
Right, which is
And
so wild.
until I walked into the store and I was like, why do I feel this space? And then I walked into the store and I saw the actual horse that I put my little son on. And
Right.
I yelled at the practitioner because she tried to move my ass to the next scene. And I said, no. I was like, I'm watching my son. He is on the horse. You need to leave me here. And I was just like this woman that was like, no, I was very adamant about this horse. And then I see the horse in the store. Not only that, I see a very specific other ride sitting right in front of it. It was like historical things inside the shop. And right
so
before
weird.
it, the number 22 showed up, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, and then it like broke me open. So these things, these signs, the things you see in these visions literally have more layers to come for you. It's simply like the seed that's planted before you can actually see.
Oh, and I think that we did the past life regression probably a year and a half ago, and I still feel, so many different connections and so many different like, oh, that reminds me of the dream. Like that, and it wasn't a dream. Like it was my past life. Like there's certain things that will remind you throughout the time that you think you'd think you'd forget all the details. Like it's
like a memory.
So it's like just in my head.
Yeah, I can't erase the pictures I saw when I first did it. Even when I was kind of judging it at the first thing, I was like, I can't erase it. It's like, the clarity of it after, and it's imprinted in your mind and you cannot escape it.
No,
it's like, it's just there.
It's bizarre. It's bizarre, but amazing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, I'm so grateful that I did it. It's something that I'm like getting something out of my eye. So the people watching the video are going to be like, what is wrong with her? It's a past life thing. I don't know. But no, I can't wait to go back and do it again. Because I'd be so curious. And I think the other thing that you do that I don't know if you talk about, but you write a list of questions that you have your subconscious kind of answer. And, I sometimes go back and look at those questions. Everything I've done, like, was because of that, and I asked about it, selling a house. I asked about having a baby. I asked about career. Everything was answered and I did it.
Yeah.
And whether I chose to do it that way or if that's just how the universe made it go, like, I think that was super important too, to kind of like close everything out the way that you did that. I think that that's so special and unique and really great.
And it really shows you that once you get the conscious mind out of the way, the one that's so focused on the physical world that we
Right.
live in, you
Right.
tap into that unified field, that expansive energy, your Akashic records. You can pull the information that you need from within you, you
Yeah,
know?
totally.
And I don't mean
Totally.
just like, oh, I have the answers. I mean, you have the
You have the
answers.
answers and you just have to listen to yourself. And also, I think most importantly is you have to trust yourself.
Yes.
Like just trust your instinct.
Exactly. You know, and that's the biggest thing is that most people don't trust themselves. So how can they trust anything outside of them?
Yeah.
That's where the biggest issue with trust comes from.
And you have to trust yourself. I mean, I found myself going against a lot of people's, the opinions. People were very opinionated when you're pregnant. And I was like, I don't want to do what you're doing. Like, I respect that you're doing it that way, but I'm going to do it my way because I know it's right for me.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I did certain things that were right for me because it ended up in the long run being better for my baby or being better for my health or
Yeah.
my sanity, so I think it's important just to trust your gut.
It really is. Oh my gosh. Well, when we go back into that space, you won't see the same things that you saw before unless
No.
there's more information in there for you. But generally what happens is a whole new slew of stuff because you cracked open that level of your consciousness,
Right.
and what comes in and layers in after that is on just other levels, because when I do repeat
Yeah.
ones, the stuff that comes through for people is just on other levels. So
Oh, I
that,
can't wait.
yeah, it'll be so fun, and I wouldn't be surprised if you do see some Egyptian stuff and then some.
And I have more questions like that I
Yeah,
want to answer now. You know what I mean? Like there's
yeah.
more stuff that's happened in my life. Like I feel like I've had a rebirth, like, right. We've talked about this, like that you have your own rebirth, when you have a baby. And I feel like I've had a rebirth and now I'm ready to know more about that.
It's so incredible. Well, do you have a parting message for anyone that's listening, something that you want to give to them?
I would say trust your gut. It's always the most important. And truthfully, I did, and it steered me in the right direction. And if you feel called to something, whether that be being called to, like I was being called to you to do a past life regression therapy session, or, being called for work or being called to a certain person or, writing a text, I don't know, whatever it is, whatever you feel called to do it. Life is short. Life is important and everything is a learning experience. And it may feel like the world is out to get you and like you're falling apart. And trust me, I experienced that quite recently, after my birth, like everything kind of fell apart for me, not for her, and I thought, like, what did I do to deserve this? Like, why is this happening to me? But everything happens for a reason. Everything is a story. And, if you feel called to do something, do it.
I love that. And finding the opportunities within challenges,
Yeah.
and knowing that it really is part of all of the process, and the process has the ebb and the
Yeah.
flow, the rise and the fall.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. Well, I would love people to check out your podcast. How can they find the podcast?
You can find it wherever you listen to your podcasts. It's called Emotional Support, spelled emotional support. And it's loads of fun. Our episode's great. We're going to have to do another one and we have to talk about the past life and just we have to do another past life regression therapy session.
I
I
know we'll
got to
have
make
more to
sure
talk about.
I got her on the boob and get that done with. And as soon as that's done, we're going to go right back into the subconscious.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you talking
Oh,
with
I
me
love you.
today.
You're the best.
And it felt like we were just crawled into the stars and just played like little kids once again. That's what it feels like. Thank you and have a wonderful day. I had a dream about us in the astral planes. We were in a Thailand we were in a Thai land, like a Thai land
I want to
base.
be in Thailand right now.
There was this big, beautiful building, and we got on this boat, and we were like, we were going to eat or something, and we were going to try to get on this boat. There was like 3 other women maybe sitting on the side, but we got on this boat and we were going to go somewhere, and your dog came and was there, and I was like, your dog sat at the back of the boat like this.
Which one? Pee-wee or Dottie?
Pee-wee.
Pee-wee.
Yep. And so Pee was sitting there and looking out at the back. And I was like, Alessandra, I was like, is he okay there? He's gonna be fine, right? He's gonna be fine, right? Like, he's not gonna flip off the back. You're all, oh no, he's good. Yeah. He's good. Because he was just like this. Looking out the back.
But that's so Pee-wee, like to be like protecting the behind us to make sure we were okay on the boat.
Because it was open. It was like an open back of the boat, and he was watching back there. And I was like, okay, he's watching out. Okay. He's okay. Okay. Yeah.
My boy.
I totally forgot to tell you that.
Oh my God. I love that.
Yeah. So cool.
I'm ready for Thailand.